that, he could hear it. The same whispery importuning to be unleashed that had come from the crystal in his own world spoke to Tharizdun now. "Set me free," it said. "Let me loose." "I cannot even free myself," Tharizdun said with frustration. "Besides, your work here is done." The ignominy hit him like a spell. Here he had unfettered access to the progenitor, to the liquid crystal that embodied all the spectacular chaos that Tharizdun had tried to unleash on his own universe, and he could do nothing with it. It had done its work here and lay useless. As useless as Tharizdun himself was, but perhaps there was a way. So Tharizdun began to concentrate, to focus and project his will into the void and beyond. With enough clarity of purpose, he would be able to contact those in the world of the gods that needed him most, the disenfranchised, the downtrodden, those whose existence was most tenuous. They would hear his call and do their part. While the conscious minds of his followers were denied him, the murky veil of the dreamscape proved accessible. It was an imperfect method of communication. Through the dreams of his worshippers, he was able to reassure them that he did live, in an exile much like their own, and that his return would mean destruction of the structures that denied. Tharizdun could give his followers little beyond dreams, but the promises they held were powerful, and he could give them an impetus for that revolution. Tharizdun knew that there was a ritual that could make use of a fragment of the living gate to open a portal between the worlds. Tharizdun, in the company of his fellow gods, had found the living gate in the depths of the astral sea, and Tharizdun had opened it, unleashing the horrors of the far realm upon his home universe. Fragments of the gate existed, and if Tharizdun's worshippers performed the ritual in his abandoned dominion of Pandemonium, a tiny tear could be opened between realities. Tharizdun had never explored that option, because the portal needed to be opened on both sides in order to break free of Pelor and Eun's chains. But he had found a tool by which to bridge the gap between universes. And so, Tharizdun formed a hand of darkness and reached out to the red liquid. "Both of us are trapped, but together we can be free. Together we will unleash our might upon the people of the world, and they will drown in blood." The progenitor undulated and flowed at the chained god's touch, encircling the darkness and bone of his form. It too had been alone for a measurable time. It too hungered for purpose. Alone, both Tharizdun and the progenitor were helpless. Together, they might be able to free themselves from this void. The chained god combines two existing plans into a third that might, at last, bring both him and the progenitor out of that forsaken emptiness. The next step was to once again pierce the gulf and speak to his worshippers through their nightmares, or, rather, speak to one particular worshipper. It was always a tricky thing. From a god's perspective, the ideal worshipper was one who did so unthinkingly. There was no devotion quite like mindless devotion, uncluttered as it was by reason. But Tharizdun needed a task to be performed, one that would require dedication and ingenuity and an ability to lead other devout followers in that task. Luckily, he did have one such follower, who miraculously hadn't been killed, nor had he, like so many others, lost their minds completely to his whispering dreams. And so the exiled god reached out to Albric, his most loyal follower, to tell him to travel to the ruins of Baal Turath and find a rod containing a fragment of the living gate. The imprecision of time continued to frustrate Tharizdun, but, with a viable plan, a purpose, it seemed to slow to an agonizing crawl. Painfully aware of every moment that he sat, staring into the red abyss of the void harrow, Tharizdun waited for Albric to complete his task. Through his link with the human, Tharizdun could sense pieces of Albric's progress through the murk of the gap between universes, mostly by the mortal's emotions. The god could feel Albric's elation at finding and seizing the rod in Baal Turath, his eagerness as he used the powers that his devotion to Tharizdun provided to travel to Pandemonium via the City of Doors, his triumph as he gathered 7 more to his side.
To keep listening to this audiobook, I've left you a link in the description so you can do it, at no cost thanks to Audible's 30-day free trial.